Somewhere in your kitchen right now, there is probably a knife that cannot cut as cleanly as this rock. A volcanic glass so sharp that surgeons have used it in place of surgical steel. So sharp that under a microscope, an obsidian blade edge measures 3 nanometers thick, about 100 times sharper than the finest surgical scalpel ever manufactured. And it forms naturally, for free, in volcanic regions across the Pacific Northwest, Iceland, and dozens of other locations worldwide. The raw material costs nothing. A finished obsidian blade sells for anywhere from $20 to over $500. And museum-quality carved ceremonial pieces have sold at auction for tens of thousands of dollars. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at a dark glassy rock the same way again. The rock is called obsidian. And before we go any further, yes, it really is volcanic glass. Not a metaphor, not a loose comparison. Actual glass, formed when lava cools so rapidly that the molecules don't have time to arrange themselves into a crystal structure. The result is a natural amorphous solid, chemically similar to the glass in your windows, but formed entirely by geology, under conditions of extreme heat and almost instantaneous cooling. Ancient peoples figured out very quickly that this had consequences. On the outside, obsidian is typically jet black, deep, pure, slightly reflective black that catches light the way a dark mirror does. Some varieties show a rainbow iridescence called sheen, caused by microscopic layers of gas bubbles trapped inside the glass during cooling. Rainbow obsidian, when polished, displays vivid arcs of green, purple, and gold that seem to float inside the stone. Snowflake obsidian shows white or gray spots, clusters of a mineral called cristobalite that forms as the glass begins to partially crystallize over time. But the standard variety, plain black obsidian, is what you're most likely to encounter in the field. And once you know what you're looking at, it's genuinely one of the most visually striking rocks you'll ever pick up. It looks expensive even when it's lying in the dirt. Here's how to identify it. 2 straightforward tests. Test 1, the fracture test. Obsidian fractures conchoidally. That's the technical term, but all it means is that when obsidian breaks, it produces smooth, curved surfaces that look almost like the inside of a shell. The edges of those fractures are razor sharp. This is the same quality that made obsidian so valuable to ancient toolmakers and modern surgeons alike. If you pick up a dark, glassy rock and the broken edges are so sharp you instinctively pull your finger back, that's a strong indicator you're holding obsidian. Be careful during this test. Seriously, obsidian edges are not a joke. Test 2. The glass test. Hold the specimen up to bright sunlight or a flashlight and look through thin edges. Obsidian is translucent at the edges. Thin sections glow deep brown, amber, or red when backlit. This is because obsidian is genuinely glass and glass transmits light. Ordinary black rocks, basalt, coal, black chert, do not transmit light this way. If the edge glows brown when you hold it to the sun, you've got obsidian. The most common confusion is with black chert, another dark, glassy-looking rock that fractures similarly. But chert is typically more opaque, duller in surface sheen, and doesn't transmit the same warm color at the edges. Side by side, obsidian looks wet and alive. Chert looks flat and dead. Trust that visual difference. So what is obsidian actually worth, and how much does the form matter? Raw field specimens of plain black obsidian, the kind you pick up off the ground near a volcanic field, are worth very little in themselves. $1 to $5 per piece at rock shops. That's the baseline. But the moment you do anything to obsidian, the value changes dramatically. Tumbled and polished pieces of black obsidian sell for $3 to $15 each depending on size. Rainbow obsidian, that iridescent variety with green and gold sheen, polished into cabochons sells for $15 to $60 per stone. Snowflake obsidian cabochons go for $10 to $30. Hand-knapped obsidian blades, where a skilled flint knapper has worked the raw material into a blade using traditional techniques, sell for $30 to $200 depending on length, quality, and the reputation of the maker. A well-made obsidian arrowhead sells for $20 to $75. A long ceremonial blade, expertly worked, can fetch $300 to over $500 from collectors of primitive technology. Mahogany obsidian, a brown and black banded variety caused by iron oxidation during cooling, is increasingly popular in the jewelry market and sells for $20 to $80 per polished piece. And then there are the auction records. A pre-Columbian Aztec obsidian mirror, the kind used by priests for divination rituals, sold at a major auction house for $42,000. Aztec obsidian ceremonial knives with intact handles have fetched $15,000 to over $30,000 at specialist sales. These are not just rocks. They are artifacts of civilizations that understood the value of this material centuries before modern science could explain why it worked. The global obsidian market, including jewelry, collectibles, tools, and decorative pieces, generates hundreds of millions of dollars annually. A volcanic glass that costs nothing to find generates an industry. Where can you actually find obsidian? The United States has some of the most accessible obsidian collecting sites in the world, and many of them are on public land. Glass Buttes in Central Oregon is probably the single most famous rockhound destination for obsidian in North America. It's on Bureau of Land Management public land. Collecting is free and the entire area is essentially made of obsidian in multiple varieties: black, mahogany, rainbow, and patterned. People drive from across the country specifically to collect here. It costs nothing beyond the fuel to get there. Obsidian Cliff in Yellowstone National Park is one of the most significant obsidian deposits in North America. But collecting inside the park is strictly prohibited. The surrounding national forest land is worth exploring. Northern California, particularly the area around Napa Valley and the Glass Mountain region of Lake County, has significant obsidian deposits on accessible public land. The Medicine Lake Highlands volcanic area further north produces excellent specimens. Globally, Iceland's volcanic fields produce obsidian across accessible areas. Mexico's central volcanic belt contains obsidian sources that were among the most important trade commodities in the pre-Columbian world. Ethiopia, Armenia, and Japan all have significant deposits with long histories of human use. Geologically, you're looking for volcanic regions, specifically areas associated with rhyolitic lava flows. Obsidian forms when silica-rich lava hits water or air and cools almost instantaneously. Look for dark, glassy outcroppings near volcanic terrain. Once you've seen it in context, you'll recognize it immediately. Here's a real example. A software engineer from Portland drove out to Glass Buttes on a Saturday morning with no prior rock collecting experience. He'd read about it online the night before and decided on impulse to make the drive. He spent 4 hours on the hillside. He came home with a backpack containing 43 pounds of obsidian in 5 different varieties. He kept the best pieces for a display shelf, gave some to friends, and sold 12 polished pieces at a local craft market 3 weeks later for a combined total of $180. The obsidian cost him nothing. The craft market table fee was $20. The mistake most people make is looking for obsidian only in dramatic volcanic landscapes and giving up when the terrain looks ordinary. Glass Buttes doesn't look like a volcano. It looks like a gentle hill in the high desert. Obsidian doesn't announce itself. It sits there looking like a dark, slightly shiny rock among thousands of other rocks, until the light catches it just right and the surface lights up like black glass. Walk slowly. Look for the glint. Trust the shine. Now let me tell you the story that might be the most surprising thing about obsidian, and it has nothing to do with geology. In the 1970s, a surgeon named Don Crabtree was preparing for open heart surgery. He was also, in his spare time, a flint knapper, someone who makes stone tools using traditional techniques. He knew from his own experiments that obsidian blades were sharper than surgical steel. He also knew he was about to have his chest cut open. He made his own surgical blades from obsidian, and he asked his surgical team to use them. They did. He survived the surgery and reported that the incisions made with obsidian blades healed faster and with less scarring than comparable steel incisions, consistent with research showing that obsidian's molecular level sharpness causes less cellular damage to surrounding tissue. This story sparked serious medical research into obsidian scalpels that continues today. Several surgeons in the United States and Europe have used obsidian blades in clinical settings. The edges are so fine that under certain magnifications, you can see individual cells being separated rather than torn. Something steel simply cannot achieve regardless of how sharp it is ground. A Stone Age material, a 21st century surgical tool. And you can pick up the raw material for free in Central Oregon on a Saturday afternoon. Next time you're in volcanic country and you see something dark and glassy catching the light on the ground, don't walk past it. Pick it up carefully, seriously, the edges, and hold a thin section up to the sun. If it glows brown at the edges, you're holding a piece of natural glass that humans have valued more than almost any other rock for 50,000 years. If you want to know which rocks are actually worth picking up, subscribe to Stone Seekers, because next week we're covering a stone that looks like ordinary pink and green gravel in a riverbed. But it's found in some of the most beautiful river valleys in the eastern United States, and collectors actively seek it out at every gem show in the country. Drop a comment below. Have you ever found obsidian in the wild, or used an obsidian blade for anything? I'd love to hear your story.